Well, happy holidays and welcome to today's watercolor workshop. This is a program presented by the Loudoun County Public Library System. My name is Jeremy and I work in the programming department of LCP. I'll be your host today. If you have any questions or comments that you'd like to pass to Megha, please use the chat box and I can pass them along to her. I'd like to take the time now to introduce our artist. Megha is an award-winning artist specializing in still life and realistic watercolors. Today, she will guide us through the steps to paint a festive image. Thank you for being here tonight, Megha.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. Happy holidays, everyone. What a great way to almost celebrate December. And I know everybody's excited to celebrate Christmas with their family and the holidays and open their gifts and shopping and eating. And I think that's all, that's how holidays should be about. And why not add art to it? Because yes, it's also a way to celebrate things. So today, as you have seen on the flyer, that what we are going to paint, we are going to paint this fun image. And I know it sounds very complicated. I'll let you know what we're going to skip and how we're going to approach this image. But for now, all I want you to do is let everything go. You may not be a perfect painter or you can sketch well, but that's okay. I just want you to enjoy and embrace the process and just dive into watercolors. So as you can already see, I've drawn the image here and also the image is on the link with the drawing and everything. So I'll give you about 10 minutes to do the drawing. It doesn't have to be perfect, just a rough sketch and then we'll get started. I'll explain everything. If you have any questions, you can put it on the chat or just raise your voice. And then, yeah, we'll get into the questions and everything as soon as the drawing is done. So let's get started.
And to everyone who just logged in, I just resent the link in the chat box. So that's the link you want to click on to see the original reference image so you can start the drawing.
Once the drawing is done, I'll let everyone know how to approach the colors, how to plan this painting, and what you can change to make it easy. I know someone already emailed me how to do the pine cone here. I will explain everything, but for now, just make a simple drawing and I'll let you know how we can approach it. Most of all, just try to have fun. Um, it's the holidays time and put on some music, some jingle bells, and just enjoy the painting.
We had a question. Do they need to do the full drawing or does an outline or a loose sketch work?
Yes, a loose sketch is fine. You don't have to do a lot of detail, and I'm going to omit this, skip the um, the green part here. Yeah, the whatever it's called. So the grass or the fern or whatever, but I'm going to skip this because it gets very complicated. So yes, I've left this part. I usually keep the drawing ready because it saves me so much time because I take time to draw. And that's why I always post the image on the link as soon as we put it on the calendar because it helps to plan. You can just dive into the painting and not get frazzled with, okay, the drawing and everything.
Yeah, we had some late arrivals. Just to let everyone know, I reposted the link. I've posted a couple times. If you want to click on that link, you can get the reference image and you can start doing the loose kind of sketch of what we're going to be painting tonight.
I know some of you are new to watercolors, so I'll explain a few basic stuff before we get started. And that will help everyone to at least paint this one. And later on, after the class, or even in between the class, if you have any questions about the colors or the paintbrushes, the paints I use, the paper, do let me know. And maybe later after the class, you can just send me an email and I can send you what kind of materials I use. If you want to continue more into watercolors, um, I can really give you some good references of where to buy paints that are cost effective and won't break your bank. I can also suggest you a lot of professional grade paints that will really improve the quality of your paintings, because I know a lot of people are terrified of watercolors and they completely feel it's going out of control and don't like the quality of their paintings. It has a lot to do with the kind of materials you choose, especially paper, because paper is very important, the way it absorbs paint and water. I am using right now a very professional grade paint, paint and paper. Um, so yes, they're slightly expensive, but if you really want to learn um, it well, you'll have to buy these kind of paints and paper. It'll just give you so much more control. It'll give you less frustration as well.
It's funny, for all the art programs we have, it doesn't matter like pastels or acrylics or watercolors. Like it really does. The individual supplies do matter in a sense.
They do at some level, they do matter. I know when you're just scribbling, it's okay, but if you really want to improve the quality and be like other professional artists, you have to invest a little bit, because talent can only get you to some level. But if you're trying to compete online, or if you're trying to especially showcase your work elsewhere where you want them to sell, then yes, you are competing with the finest. So yes, then you really have to invest a little bit. But if you're just doing it as a hobby, yeah, I know, I understand, but it does matter. I hope some of you are painting with your families, maybe children, grandparents, because I do get a lot of emails where people are trying to paint with their loved ones at home. I think it's a great way to relax, just forget about everything and just sit down, a nice cup of tea, coffee, milk, whatever you like, some snacks, some cookies right now would be great. Um, and just enjoy just an hour of painting.
We had a
And
question. What if your watercolor tube busts at the closed end? Can you tape it back shut, or is the tube lost? A lost cause now?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
So the question was, if you have a watercolored tube and it bursts at the closed end, can you
Uh-huh.
tape it back shut, or is that tube lost forever? So like that, not the part where you can, oh, where you typically would put the paint out, but the
Okay.
back end.
I know sometimes once in a while you do run into that kind of thing. I would just take a small box where you can put that paint and then preserve it. Something like these. These are really tiny, nice bottles, or you know, and you can just squeeze in the whole thing, because if you just leave it like that, it's going to dry. So just put it into a small kind of box, and then yes, you're good to go. As long as the lid is shut, you're fine. Sometimes, yes, I've had those problems.
And then we said two people were having a watercolor date night tonight for this. So we appreciate you being here. That's awesome.
Ah,
And I always like to let people
wow.
know we record these, so we have available on archives on the Loudoun County Public Library's YouTube channel. So if it's something maybe towards the holidays, you kind of have some downtime, get the family together, we would love for you to be able to paint watching it on YouTube. So, but thank you for spending your time with us here tonight. We really do appreciate that.
I'm so happy to hear that a date night with watercolors. That is so exciting. That is so romantic, I must say. I hope you guys enjoy it. And
I feel like we need to. We'll give her email at the end. You guys can send her a picture of your paintings. We'll judge who has the better artist. You know, just like what a
yes.
competition. It's a date night.
Absolutely. And not just for the couple, but anyone who would like to have a feedback from me can send me your painting and I will give you the full written feedback. I love to hear from people. I always get so many emails after my class about they went back, later and saw the video and painted again. So those are my trophies actually, that people go back and watch those videos, people come back for feedback, and I'll always be happy to provide feedback. So yes, send me pictures as much as you like, and I'd love to
Your email address is Megha Watercolor at Gmail, correct? Is that the correct?
yes.
Okay,
Yes,
I'm gonna go ahead. I'll send that. I'll put that in the chat, everyone, so you can have it. So just a follow up, you can put the paint in a different airtight container. That would work as far as saving that burst tube.
yes.
Okay.
Okay, we'll just start in like 2 minutes.
Okay.
And
2-minute countdown.
yes. Okay, we are ready to begin. Just take a deep breath, forget about everything, and just think of your paint, paper, colors, and that's it. All right, so we have this image here. I'll still leave it here if anybody wants to copy the drawing. But how do you approach this kind of painting? I know it looks so complicated. So we are not going to do this part here because I realize it can get too complex and we may not be able to finish the painting in the small amount of time. So we're going to skip these teeny mini parts. But what we're going to do is we're going to paint everything in parts. We're not going to start everything full-fledged because it's always good to plan your painting in small areas. You have better control and you know where you're going. You can start anyway. Either you can start with the background first or you can start with the main elements here. It's completely an artist's choice. I think I'm going to do the background later because I'll prefer to first paint around these areas and then do the background later. It's again a choice, that's all. But how do you understand or how do you plan what colors to choose and how do you know how much paint and water to use? A lot of people um, run into these problems like, oh, I put so much water and everything is a puddle now. That's true. In watercolors, you're not just planning your painting, you're planning your ratios of paint and your water, and your paper is very important. It's very important that how you handle your paper. If it gets too dry, the water or the paint would not flow. And all those things have a very specific purpose. But just to keep it simple, I'll explain how much water and how much paint to use in very, very simple ways. The other important thing is when you decide how much paint to use, because when you see a colored image like this, sometimes it can be very difficult to judge if I should put a lot of paint here or should I put a lot of paint here, because our minds are not tuned for everyone to judge that capacity of how much paint to put. Should I put like really a thick slab of paint, just like what people do in oils, or should we just put a really watery wash? I'll explain that. But to keep it simple, what's more important is when you decide how much paint or water to use is to think everything in the form of values. Now, what are values? The lightness or darkness of a paint. Let me give you an example. So if I take this paper and I'm going to just put a little bit of color here, this is one value. If I take a lot of paint here, and you can see this is really dark, this is another value. So everything in this world is in the form of values, light and dark, light and dark, light and dark. Secondly, anything in this world is made of shapes. Shapes define us. If you look at someone's face, they have different shapes, right? And outside, a tree, a house, they're nothing but shapes. They can be very complex, but they're actually made up of very, very simple shapes, again, like circle, triangle, rectangle, things like that. This is the same way we're going to think about this image. We're not going to think, what is this? Is it a Santa? Is it a flower? Is it a ball? We're just going to think it in the form of shapes. This is a circle. Again, you can see this. This could be like a small triangle. This could be a triangle, you can see, right? This is more like a rectangle or oval or anything like that. But if you start imagining yourself in the form of shapes, it becomes very easy. You don't have to define anything. You don't have to name everything. It's just in the form of shape. So that's what I'm going to refer throughout the painting, that this is a shape, right? The other thing what I wanted to highlight is sometimes these have textures, and I'm going to explain how to put those textures there. Okay. But before we get started, I'm going to explain how much water or paint to use. Okay. Now, let's think in the real world when I say, if I take a little bit of paint and a lot of water, let's imagine this is tea. Okay. Like a really pale green tea. This way you will have an idea how much paint and water to pick. Next, I'm going to start with little more paint and some water. This is too dark, but let's call this as coffee. Next, I'm going to take some more paint and less water. Each time, I'm increasing my paint. Remember, they're all still quite fluid, right? So, tea, coffee, and milk. Remember, this is not your oat milk, not your almond milk, not your fat-free milk. This is your regular vitamin D whole milk. Okay? Tea, coffee, milk. Next is, we're going to take some more of paint. Each time I'm increasing the intensity of the paint. And let's call this as cream. Lastly, I'm going to really remove most of the water, take like a nice thick paint. And this will be butter. Very little water here. The rest are still quite fluid. This way, now, not only you've understood what values are, you've also understood how much paint and water to pick. Okay, this thing takes practice. So if you are not able to judge this today, it's completely fine. Don't beat yourself up. Don't tear your painting, please. It's okay. It just takes time. It's a muscle memory. It's just like riding a bicycle. It took me a lot of time as well, because I'm just not used to doing that measurement in my mind, that ratio in my mind. So yes, it takes time, but this is what we're going to follow today. Okay, so this is good. Now, since the drawing is done, we will try to understand what colors we're going to pick. Honestly, I really don't care what colors you pick. You can pick blue, you can pick pink. I'm just going to stick to the colors that are highlighted here in the reference image because it's just easier. And I'm a realistic painter. I paint what I see. I don't paint what I imagine. Sometimes I change, but mostly I paint what I see. So that's what I'm going to do. You can see what colors we have. You have like nice yellows, oranges, browns, greens, mostly very warm colors and a little bit of cool colors. Warm colors are colors like your sun, right? Your sunflower. And cool colors are like your ocean, like your sky, your greens and blues, right? So we'll stick to this color palette. And again, if you want to change anything, feel free. And I would love to see how you've challenged yourself because you're the artist. This is your painting, and you can make it whatever you like. All you need to stick to is the values. This is going to be light. This is going to be dark. That's what is going to make this painting pop. Okay, so we'll get started. I already have my paints lined up here. I think I have the yellow. This is quite dark brown, sepia. This is burnt sienna, reds, green, blues, purple. I may not use all. Let's see. I'm going to start with this circle. Remember, I'm not saying this is a ball. I'm going to say, or it's an ornament. I'm going to say it's a circle. Okay, just keeps things easy. We're going to start painting this with layers here. So first you can see there's yellow, then there's orange, and there's this dark reddish brown. Okay. And I'm going to paint this something called as wet on wet. When you say wet on wet, it means you already have wet paint or just clear water and going to add some paint on it. It's called wet on wet technique because sometimes I want the colors to just mingle on the paper instead of me mixing in the palette. So I'll keep changing that method every now and then, but for now, I'm going to take some yellow and I'm going to take a really watery, almost like a tea consistency yellow because I can see it's really light. Okay. And that's what I'm going to keep it to. Remember, watercolors dry a little lighter. So if you think once your paint is dried and they look a little light, you may have to go and add a little bit of color onto it because that's the property of watercolors. They do dry a little lighter, unlike acrylics and oils. So I'm going to keep it super light. And while this is already wet, I'm going to mix some orange, some yellow, and some red. If you already have orange on your palette, feel free. And this is going to be a little more thicker than what? Almost like a coffee consistency or a milk consistency. The reason being, I want this to really stick there. If I put too watery on it, that yellow will be lost. And I can come down because the beneath layers also have a little bit of all the top layers. Always go and clean your brush in your water container. Keep your colors clean. Next, I'm going to take a little more thicker reddish tone. To go into it. This is all little free flow. Don't worry if it's not perfect. And while it's still wet, I will go with nice, thick, almost like cream to buttery consistency. Why? Because this is so dark. I want to keep it dark, right? And make sure it blends into it. See, because it is dark and it is thick, that paint that I just applied, the dark brown, is not moving. It's stuck on the paper. It's almost like oil paint, okay? So now usually in my studio when I'm painting something like this, I take my time. I add many, many layers. But since we have to finish this painting in a very small amount of time, I'm going to add this thick layer so that you understand what I'm trying to achieve. Great, we finished this part. I'll let this dry, give you guys a minute to catch on. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask in between. It's totally fine. It can be a very silly question. It's totally fine, but just let me know. As soon as things are drying, I'll I start planning what to approach next because it's important to keep moving in your painting. You have to also remember that when you start painting, you're moving your hand, so you cannot paint here and then go on top because it's going to be wet here, right? So I'll approach from top to bottom so that I can move very freely. All right. Let's start from this top here. Again, I don't know what it's called. It could be a hat, let's say, okay? If you don't know the name, you can say this shape here or this area here. I try to keep it as simple as possible. I'm going to take some yellow. Let's add here. Okay. Also, I can see some yellow here. And I may not complete that area immediately. I'll come back when it dries. So I'll leave this here. Then I'll come back to the other area. Okay. I want this yellow to dry, and then I'm going to add more colors. Okay. Next, I'm going to take some of this orange that I made. And maybe I need a little more orange, a little thicker. Just make some small strokes here. Okay, I'll teach you how to make the dry stroke here too. But for now, we need this. It's almost like an orange brown. I think I can add some nice orange here, look pretty. Colors don't matter. Like I said, you can make this whole painting in just two colors. Maybe just red and green, maybe just whole black monochromatic. It's the values that matter. That's what makes it look real. Some orange here. And wherever I can see, I'm going to add some orange here. I see some orange here too. I think the most important thing in watercolors is patience. It's not a difficult medium, it's a different medium. You just have to handle it very differently. And I know people who are used to acrylics and oils, they just love to splatter paint on their easels and their canvases. And yes, there are some loose watercolor artists as well who love to do that and they're so good at it. But when you're painting something in realism, takes time. It just is a process, and you have to really understand a few basics, just like anything else. But patience is something that you have to develop in watercolors because it's hard to fix watercolors. In acrylic, you can just put some white paint and it'll be done. But in watercolors, it's hard to fix. The paper can really ruin it, and it's hard to lift colors. So just a little bit of planning helps you. I'll take a little bit of red here while this is wet, and I'm going to just add some here. You can also add brown. I can see some areas have brown, but I'm going to keep it nice glowing with red. Some more orange in these areas. Okay. Tinge of red here. Okay. Next, I'll move down. Okay. I will come to these areas later again, but we can put some orange and reds here too, because I see those colors. And because I've already mixed it, I move around. Like I said, this is completely artist choice. If they want to first finish the top and then come down, I just move around because I feel that I can just multitask it. And while that dries, I can paint other areas. It just gives me more flexibility.
Someone commented that for the fine details on the face they did with watercolor pencils, that not perfect, but easy for a beginner to kind of give them some confidence.
Yeah, you can use watercolor pencils, but I would say it's better to use, a very small brush. You get these really fine brushes. Almost the number goes from 0, 000. And yes, they're a bit of work of patience, but yeah, if you feel comfortable, feel free to use pens and pencils and whatever. But I use these very fine brushes. It's again, like I said, it's completely your choice. You can use whatever is comfortable. I'll use some yellow as well here. And while it's wet, use some orange. Okay. I'll give you guys a minute to catch up. Okay. Now we will get into the spine cone area. Okay, I know everybody's like, how are we going to approach this? Well, like I said, we are going to approach this in a negative form. Do you see all these dark shadows here in this black and white picture? We're going to first paint these dark shadows, because once we get these out of our way, we can just paint these light areas with our same, the yellows and oranges and red. But this is going to be almost like the skeleton of that pine cone. Okay, and what colors are we going to use? We can use again browns, sepia. Just to keep it simple, I'm going to keep one color or maybe add a little bit of red into it. Okay, and remember they're very dark. Okay, these are light areas, so we're going to keep it light, and these are dark, so we can put almost like a milky or creamy consistency. Okay, so I'm going to take some nice thick paint, maybe even add a bit of red into it, and I'm going to slowly paint these dark areas. They're super dark. They almost look like black, but they're not black actually. You can even make it a little different by adding reds. It gives a little bit of nice variety of color. You can make it purple. That's totally fine. How do you make purple? Red and blue. If you already have purple on your palette, feel free to use them. But just look at your black and white picture or your color and keep moving slowly to fill these gaps. I keep mixing different colors, a little bit of red, a little bit of purple, a little bit of brown, just to give it a little bit of variety. Otherwise, it'll just to look too boring. Like everything looks like black. I hope everyone is with me and not fallen asleep. And at this point, some of you might be feeling, I'm a horrible painter and I am not painting well. That's okay. As an artist, everybody gets those feelings. Everybody's an artist. That's what I believe in. And remember, most of your paintings would not look good until it's almost 80-85% complete. So hang in there slowly. Just think about completing the painting rather than worrying about how it's going to look. Don't tear your paintings, please. I see a lot of people doing that. You don't have to. Be kind to your paintings. And believe me, things do get better with practice. That's how I have learned. I'm completely self-taught. I really used to get frustrated, but with time, I have really enjoyed embracing the process. And I just got better with practice. There was no magic, absolutely. And anybody can get better with practice. So just remember that it's just practice, patience, and you can paint anything. It doesn't have to be in watercolors. And I would say one most important tip is complete your work. You may not be able to finish that painting right away. Uh, Even if you put it away, come and complete it. It's something else to see a finished piece than an unfinished piece. So make sure you complete your paintings whenever you get the time, and you will feel so much more better than just looking at that half filled painting with just few colors into it. And see, all I'm doing is looking at my black and white picture, and wherever I see some darker areas, I'm just adding some dark paint. That's all. Do you see? We almost got the skeleton of that pine cone here, even though I shouldn't be calling a pine cone. All I'm saying is it's a shape. You can see they're almost like diamond shape areas. All right, I'll give you guys a minute to finish this part and then we'll come back. We'll let this dry, in fact, and then go to the upper areas, because I don't want to add any colors in this lighter areas while this is quite wet. It's just going to blend into it or just become a puddle. Any questions? Please let me know. Okay, next, let's move on to the other areas here. And I can see that, you know, they have this nice orangish brown tones here. I'm going to mix some orange. And again, looking at the black and white areas, I'm going to paint this area next. It's quite dark. Just a little bit of orange here, orangish, brownish tone. I just mix some orange and brown. That's all. Let it dry. Same way, I'm going to get some brown. Make it a little darker by adding a darker brown to it. And I'm going to paint these dark areas. Do a little bit of orange here or red here. Same way, I'm going to come to this area. It's a bit of brown again. Keep comparing your areas with the adjacent area. How dark is it? How light is it? Should I use a tea consistency pigment, or should I use like a really cream or buttery? How much paint should I pick? I'll take a little bit of orange here. Put this here. Okay. Then, yeah, just like I said, just looking at the darker areas here so that we can fill in. This is quite dark. Okay, so I need it quite dark here. This one again here, brownish. I'll also add a bit of brown here, dark ones, because it is dry. Keeping it super dark and nice because that's how it looks on my black and white image. If you want to mingle your colors right on the paper, that's what when you use wet on wet. If you don't want to, then you just let it dry. That's the reason some places I'm just painting it while it's still wet because I want those colors to mingle. Again, some dark areas here. It's a bit too dark. Okay. Next. Again, I'm going to shape, actually, no, we can do that later. How about this area? You can see it's, if you see the picture, it's almost like has a texture here. Okay, I'll show you how to paint this texture. So this is called a dry brush technique. So let's say you take this sheet of paper and I'm going to take away most of the water from my paintbrush. I'm going to dab it on my towel. And then I'm going to take some paint. And you can see, you can almost hear the sound. Take some paint. And you see this? You can almost see the texture here. It has very less water, a decent amount of paint. And this is what I'm going to do here. Okay. I'm going to take some orangish, almost like orangish and a brownish color. So you can mix some orange. I'm adding a little bit of brown to it. You can just even add brown. And I'm going to just, for a second, take out all the excess paint on it. I think it's too orange, so I need a bit of brown. Yeah. And then I'm going to start adding that rough texture here. Remember, it's not too dark because this adjacent area is quite dark. So you want to make sure that you don't pick up too much paint. Again, the value still has to be there, but I'm getting a texture here. Same way, I'm going to go into these areas. I think the color mixing went a little weird for me, but that's okay. I'm going to stick to the values. That's more important for me. Okay. Same way, let this dry. And then what we can do is while this is drying, we need another layer of dry brushing here. Okay. But in the meanwhile, we can add some colors here. Again, the same. I'm going to pick some yellows, really light here, as I see in the black and white image. Keeping it light, because remember, I need to add, it has to balance the adjacent colors. So keeping it light. You see a lot of white areas here, right? And I know in acrylic and all, people use white paint, but in watercolors, you actually don't use white paint. We just leave the paper as it is, and that's the white of the paper. In very rare cases, I do use white sometimes, but mostly you just leave the paper as it is. So that's what I'm going to do. Wherever you see white, I'm going to just leave those areas as it is. Okay, that's going to be the white of your paper. Now I'm going to take some of that orange reddish mixture, and you can just add a little bit of variety here with the values. Keeping it light. I don't want to add too much to it because, like I said, it is still a very lighter area there. I'm adding a little bit of brown too, just some variety. Most importantly, keep the values clean and they will pop up. They will look real. Okay. I'll give you guys a minute to finish and then we'll finish all these small areas. We'll do the background in the end because that's going to be a very one-shot painting. It shouldn't take more long. We're almost coming towards the end. While everything is drying, we can just finish some darker areas here. Okay. I see some nice browns in this area. Warm colors. You can take browns, you can take oranges, you can take reds, but just keep it very minimal in this area. Same way here. In this area, it's some brown here. And then a really dark patch. When this dries, we'll do the details here. Okay, let's get into this area again and finish this area, which has, again, dry brush. I'm going to take some drier, darker brown now and do the same dry brush technique. You can take any color you like. You can take a bit of red too. Totally fine. Okay, I missed something here. Okay. In these areas, I'm just going to outline some darker areas. You can already see the darker areas here. So you can just pick your browns or whatever dark color you're using and just finish this area. Some dry brush in this area, darker areas. Some reds too, because they're looking very nice, colorful. Some definition here. Also some definition here. You have to always keep going back to your painting to see where you need any definition. Things you can get lost in the painting, so you have to always keep going back and forth to see where it needs some value adjustment. Because when it dries, you will know that how much um, more color needs in that area. Lastly, I'm going to take this nice brownish purplish mixture. It's purple and a little bit of brown mixed into it. And then we can go ahead and add these finer details. You can also use black, although I don't prefer to use direct black from tubes, especially in watercolors. They look very flat and boring because nothing actually is that black in nature. They're always a combination of different colors beneath it or the colors that are reflecting around that area. So I hardly use black from the tube, very rarely. Always mix my own blacks. Okay. You can see that things are coming into shape. I'm just giving a little bit of outline because sometimes, you know, I lose the drawing. I don't want to lose the drawing. Some dark areas here. Some dark areas here. I'm going to add some dry brush here as well. Or maybe just add some color so that it gives a definition here. Okay. Some brown here. Great. Okay, I'll give you guys a minute and then we'll do the background. We're almost getting close to finishing. I think probably just 5-10 more minutes. We'll tweak a few things. I know we haven't done the eyes. We'll do that. But I want this area to dry before I get into it. So what are the colors we're going to do for our background? I'm going to use whatever colors I was mixing, again, to keep the whole painting in the same harmony. Oranges, yellows. We didn't use that with green, so we'll use a lot of green here. You can also put green somewhere here so that they all look together. And browns, definitely dark browns. So before you start your background, what's important is you make a good puddle of paint because you'll need a lot of paint ready as soon as you start the painting. And I'm going to do wet on wet. I'm going to wet that whole area and then I'm going to start adding a lot of color onto it. So I'm going to adding a lot of water here so that I can pick it very quickly when I need it. Because remember, once that water goes onto the paper, it will start drying soon. And if it is too dry, the paint will not flow. And we don't want that. We want it to like really flow and all mingle together. I need some orange here. Need some red. Okay, let's pick some red. Okay, I think I'm out of some colors. Let me just. Okay, before we go into it, let's finish the eyes. I'm going to take some little darker brown. And just make an outline of it. Because I think I almost lost the drawing here, so I'll just make an outline. Really nice and dark. Okay, and we'll come back to it. Let it dry. We need to put some color into it. Okay. Next, for the background. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my really thick brush here and I'm going to take a lot of water and start adding here around this shape. This is, you have to do this carefully. Okay. Usually I would use the masking fluid to protect that area. So once masking fluid is actually a very rubber liquid. As soon as you put onto it and it dries, it doesn't allow any paint. So I usually protect those areas with the masking fluid, and later I remove it once I've done with my painting wherever I need to paint. So it just makes it easy to protect your delicate areas, especially your whites, because I don't use white paint in watercolors. Very rarely. Maybe sometimes I have to fix something. That's when I use white paint. Otherwise, I don't use white paint. Or maybe to splatter, like to show snow or like a nice sky or something like that. But usually no. So I put a nice amount of water here. Remember, it's I have a lot of water, but it's not a puddle. I don't want it to really mess the whole painting. Okay, now I'm going to start with some yellows. Again, I'm looking at my black and white so that I know how much paint to use where. Some areas are lighter, some areas are darker. Then I'm going to start adding some oranges. So this is the fun part. You can just make this on your own. You know, you can just splatter paint here as much as you like, the way you want it. It's always nice to use a bigger brush for these areas because you can get a lot of paint out on the paper immediately. Some reds. Some browns. Really dark browns. You can see how fast I'm moving. It's because it's wet and I am taking that opportunity for all the colors to mingle. If I wait too long, this is going to dry and it'll be really hard to move the color around it. So this is why I mentioned that planning in watercolors is important, especially for a larger area like this. You will lose the opportunity to mix those colors on paper if you don't move fast. Or you have to find a way how to work in smaller areas. But if you just let it dry, it's gone. I'm going to take some green as well. I kind of lost my yellows, but that's okay. It's fine. I think I still like it the way it is. But you can see that now this whole canvas is full of colors, right? I still have some things to do, but I'm going to let this dry. Okay, we almost have just 5 minutes just to tweak a few things. but you can see that it just has to dry. And then I think I messed up something here, but that's okay. Yeah, I lost the shape here. That's okay. But you can see how the background is just popping. It is so dark that it's popping this light area, this whole element that we're trying to showcase here. So this is what makes realism work. When you adjust your values well, then things come to real life. But until then, if your values are not correct, it will not look real. You will just, this will be like an isolated thing here. So it's very important that your values are right. That will make it look completely real. Whatever you're trying to paint, whether you're trying to paint a pot or a person, whatever it is. Okay. I'll let this dry. Made some mistakes here, but that's okay. You can clean it up. While the upper part is drying, I'll go ahead and finish the eyes. I think the eyes had a bit of orange in it or red. We can add that. It's bit, or you can even add a bit of brown, but there is some color into it. Okay. And a little more of dry brush here on the top. Here as well. In this area, I feel that it has a bit of like a nice warm color. So I'm going to add a bit of tinge of yellow here. Still going to keep it dry brush. See, we left this area as white here. Dry brush again. And some colors just bleeded into this area, but that's okay. We can fix it. Some touches here. Okay. When this dries, I might have to go back here and add a little bit more of, I think, a darker area, because this is not popping out as much as I would like to. If you see the value here, it's a little light here. So this area is not popping. So I definitely need, maybe I can try here now to see if I can add some, because it is important that this area pops out. I guess I'll have to let it dry. But you get the point that how these values matter to pop these elements out. And once it dries, I may go ahead and just add a few more tweaks. But overall, we're done with the painting. And I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, please send me an email. I'll be happy to give you answers, feedback, whatever you like. And happy holidays, everyone. Enjoy. Enjoy is the best time of the year.